Every time I read about the future, I'm just like, I don't like the future.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons that people might have that reaction. So you're not, first of all, you're not alone in that. But I guess I'd say, for workers especially, there are concerns that the future is going to be a scary place. And
Hmm.
I mean, to be more serious about it, what is the big concern? I think it's technological unemployment.
One of the things I thought was interesting about your book is your book is about the future, but so much of it is also about the past. Can you tell us the story of the like old school diners with they tried to automate and what happened with that?
Last year, they tried to open a cafe in San Francisco called Itza, and it was going to be completely automated. You weren't going to see a single person. And people said it's automated, it's totally the way of the future. What they didn't realize is that there were, for many years, these places where people would go, the automat, where people could drop coins in and end up taking meals out, and you didn't have to interact with a person. So it wasn't really new in that sense. There were already diners and eateries like this. They were very popular in the 1950s and 60s. In the 1970s, they kind of waned because you had to put coins in and there was inflation, and now the coins didn't really buy you as much as they used to, and people don't want to bring along a big bag of coins. So those ended up, because of the method of payment, people weren't using credit cards like they do today. They ended up becoming unpopular. So I don't, again, they thought they'd try this in 2018, 2019. It didn't go anywhere. The restaurant ended up going out of business. But now in 2020, maybe this is the kind of restaurant we all need,
Yeah.
to have less contact with people, or have a screen up and you just take your meal and go. I think a lot of us have looked to automation this during the pandemic and thought, this is terrific. How
Yeah.
exciting that things can be automated and we don't need everything to have a human touch.
Some of our story about work and technology is also about culture. And it brought to mind, like in Japan, if you go into like an old school ramen shop, there are no waiters. You just, you use a vending machine to buy the ticket, and then you just give the chef the ticket. But it still actually feels like a very human experience. And it still ends up being like this blend of like old and new. And so I do wonder how like our culture is going to sort of mesh with the technology. And also, I mean, COVID is obviously also making very rapid changes to our culture.
I agree. And I think I had some of the pictures in the textbook, and I love these, of the
I
robot
love the pictures
hotel
too. Yeah,
of
I
the
love.
robot hotel in Japan. And that, I actually am writing a short story about the robots in that hotel, because they're dinosaurs, and there's a T-Rex as the bellhop, who's super exciting. And I think it'd be awesome if in some alternate science fiction world they decided to join a union. So I'm working on a short story about this, but and I do think it's a really interesting example. I mean, Japan has really embraced automation in a way that I'm in a way that not many other countries have. I guess South Korea also, people really love robots and automation. People sometimes meet this with a bit of curiosity, but also sometimes with a bit of fear.
Hmm.
So, if you want to get a good conversation started with students in the class, all you have to do is start asking about the self-checkout line.
Yes, I try almost never to use the self checkout line because I feel like it's bad for jobs. What do you do when you go into a store with a self checkout line?
Well, right now I'm not going to a store at all. Right now
Okay.
it's grocery delivery all the way. That's kind of been my concession to the pandemic. But it's always been a dilemma.
Mhm.
And you want to just go through it and get done, and you want it just to be fast. But then on the other hand, there are many people who get their start being a grocery checker or bagger, and they're going to move their way up within the store. For a lot of people, this is the first rung into maybe a management position or some other position within the store. And for many people, it's a part-time employment, but something that might give them training for the next job, which
I
is
know. Well,
interesting.
so we have a grocery store here where the ownership of the store is turned over many times by national chains, but the workers there have stayed put the whole time, and they're like these community linchpins. Like like practically everyone either recognizes their faces or knows their name, has a favorite checkout clerk that they choose the line because they want to talk to the person and find out how they're doing. And even I think even especially in the pandemic, like I think people look forward to going to the store to see their favorite grocery clerk because these folks, they like know everyone and they're like, I don't know.
They
It's
know
like,
what you eat and they know what the coupons are. And of course you're gonna keep going back because you enjoy that connection.
yeah,
And
it's
so I
like
think
social
that's,
capital, I guess.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And so it's really interesting. And there's a lot of really fascinating questions about this. So the other way you might think about that social aspect is that, even a job like a receptionist who welcomes people into an office, this job is being increasingly automated. And it
Yeah.
seems interesting that they're selecting this job, which is supposed to be welcoming and the face of the company, and as you said, the social capital. But it's being outsourced now or fissured so that you have the voice being provided by someone who might be in another country. And they can do things like open the locks on the door to let you in or make the phone calls that need to be made. But it's cheaper to do that. And so you have something that's very human oriented, and yet it's being provided remotely. And so that
Yeah.
may end up, being some of the story of the pandemic as well, is that we're discovering things that you thought you couldn't do remotely, you actually can. And that's part of the interesting story to me, that something like, I think the statistic I saw was something like 42% of the workforce started working remotely as a result of the pandemic in the United States.
I mean, what do you think the long-term changes will be from the pandemic?
Remote work has been with us a long time, and actually
Mm-hmm.
there are many disabled people who really were advocating for it for many, many years, asking for remote work.
Mm-hmm.
And they were told no, or they were denied. And it was like, you have to be here in a physical workplace. You
That's
must
a
be
great
here.
point.
You being here is essential.
Mm-hmm.
And when the pandemic came along and people started working at home, suddenly a lot of that rationale disappeared. And I think we're understanding that more and more, that just because someone sits at a desk all day, doesn't mean they're necessarily doing a lot of work. And just because somebody might be back and forth and doing other things doesn't mean that they're not getting their job done. Other people really don't like this way of working.
Mm-hmm.
They're frustrated. They don't get to check in with their team members maybe as regularly. They feel isolated. And that's actually a common complaint that people who are working on gig platforms in the form of crowd work, who are doing transcription or various office tasks that they're doing for Upwork or Mechanical Turk or other types of providers, but platforms. But they have complained about this feeling that you don't get to see the people you work for, you don't get to see your coworkers, you feel like you're just working in a bubble, and it's really hard to manage that feelings of isolation.